What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we're going to be talking about weapon cores and the most efficient way for you to farm the new void erosion activity to be able to get as many of these weapon cores as possible so that you can of course use them to enhance your ultimate weapons even further. So just a quick recap on exactly how the system works. You have your ultimate weapons in the game. You can essentially open up an ultimate weapon here, and this is done at Descendant, by the way, if that's not clear yet. So Descendant is this merchant over here. He's in this side of the city. So when you go to Descendant over here, you can say equip core, and you can choose a weapon that has not been opened up for cores yet. And you will have to use an item called a core binder to unlock weapon cores for that weapon. If you're looking at a way to farm void abyss metal fragments efficiently, I also have a video of that on the channel, so go ahead and just check. You'll be able to see that you can actually make a lot of these materials and essentially farm a core binder every half an hour, so you should be good to go. But then once you use a core binder and you open up a weapon, you are presented with slots which you can then slot weapon cores into. Now at the moment right now, the highest tier of weapon core that we can get is tier 7. And so this is the tier that you'll want. Now in Feb, we are getting the final patch for season 2, and there's gonna most likely be more tiers. I'm assuming it's gonna go all the way up to tier 10, but it could plateau at 8 or whatever. Maybe tier 7 is even just the highest, and the additional difficulties of void erosion is just going to be better ways for us to farm this. In other words, get more of them. So at the moment right now, that's unclear. I do, however, think that tier 7 is not the final tier. I do think we're going to get higher than that. But the bottom line is there are different kinds. There's firepower, attribute, and so on. And you match the slot with the weapon core. So for example, this particular weapon that we have here is the Voltia. It has one free augmentation one, which can take any core. And then it has a firepower one, which can only take firepower. It has an attribute one, which can only take attribute. I think you get how it goes. So the bottom line here is, before you really start investing into this system, you want to get the highest tier core that you can possibly get. Now, it's entirely possible that you might not be able to farm at this high level, but the idea of this video is for me to show you where you can get tier 7s the most efficiently and the most of them in any given amount of time. I do also have a Ines build on the channel, which is the build that I actually use to farm this, and I farm all the way up to level 20, which is the highest level of void erosion that we can do right now. So that's definitely possible, and you can actually follow that build and you'll be able to see it. During the course of this video, I'll also splice in some footage of me actually doing runs with that, but that's basically it. When we look at the activity itself, actually, which is void erosion purge, you'll notice that when you start this out, you have the first 10. You have to play each one and finish it with 5 minutes playtime remaining to unlock the next stage. Some of these you can only queue into in private operations. Some of these you can queue into with groups. The bottom line is you will progress through these linearly, doing 1 which opens 2, 2 which opens 3, so on and so forth. And then you get to 10, then 10 opens 11, and then it goes all the way to 20. This is the maximum amount of void erosion purge stages that we have in the game right now. There's more to come in the February patch. Now, when you are looking for tier 7 weapon cores, the last 4, 17, 18, 19, and 20 are the most efficient ones to farm. It's not to say that you can't possibly, as a random drop, see some tier 7s actually drop in prior difficulties, but they really start showing up from 17, 18, 19, and 20. So that was my sample size. I tested 17, 18, 19, and 20 extensively to figure out which of them actually gave you the most tier 7s. Now, you will also notice one thing, that in the reward info, you'll notice that it doesn't actually show tier 7 as a reward. You can see even with 18, that's just all tier 6s. And it scales all the way up. Even with 20, it's all tier 6s. That's because the tier 7 is a random drop. You will get some of them during the actual purge while you are just killing random enemies, like some will drop, and then you'll also get some as a reward at the end. Now, this is completely random, and when we look at the results just now of my test to kind of show you which one of these 4 you should be prioritizing to get as many weapon cores as possible, you'll see that it is fairly random. And so therefore it's better to kind of like just look at an average over time, which is of course how I, compiled my information. Now, just a quick side note, actually, before we look at this information, I just want to put this piece in here because whenever I put out something like this and I mention times, I have people that show up in the comments going, hey man, did you take into account for like how long it takes to load the mission and for me to dismantle my goods and all this stuff? And my answer to that is no. I erroneously assumed that people would apply the common sense and know that when I put times and average times in, it assumes the time inside the activity. It's impossible for me to predict all the different variations of load times that present in this game, since there are many platforms that this game is on. Even just on PC, it depends on things like seek time on your hard drive, how good your specs are, how good your internet speed is, all that shit. So there's like a whole bunch of variables there that make it impossible for me to predict how much time you would actually spend outside the activity. So therefore, please understand that I don't include, I mean, if you want to yank your crank after every third run, or I don't know, if you're playing this on an easy bake oven and, it's taking like 69 minutes to load into a void erosion purge, I can't fucking, allocate any time for that in my calculations. So please understand that in videos like this, when I mention time, it means time inside the activity. So if I, for example, say that you're going to spend 30 minutes and you'll have one of these items, it means that you'll spend 30 minutes doing the thing. Anything that you do besides the thing comes on top of that time. And I hope that's clear. Alrighty, so let me just orientate you on the information here quickly that you're looking at. But pretty much I took round 17, 18, 19, and 20, and I ran 30 of each. What you're looking at here is only 10 rounds as kind of like just a way for you to show how I compiled information. And I basically timed my time in the round and which cores of which type I got there. This was to kind of establish if there was a pattern of certain cores, dropping from certain rounds or certain configurations of them, or if there was something that I could essentially repeat. And as mentioned, I did that 30 times per round. So I did 30 17s, 30 18s, 30 19s. Before we get to those figures, so you can see all of this stuff is essentially here. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you that I very soon realized that we can kind of like exclude round 17 because round 18, 19, and 20 are just far superior. We're going to look at the maths behind that just now to show you what I mean by that. But the bottom line is, I kind of like realized like we don't even have to, regard 17. Now, 18, 19, and 20 is basically where it's at. Now, round 18 is an electric round, meaning like electric defenses are present in that round. So that makes it, difficult, obviously, to attack the enemies with electric-based descendants or electric weapons. So you have to take that into account. Round 19 is a fire round, same thing for fire. And round 20 is a toxic round. What's also worth noting is 18 and 19 are in the facility, meaning you can use corridors and walls and shit like that to essentially, hide and dart in and out, which plays a massive role in terms of survivability. These are very, very difficult encounters, especially if you're playing it solo. And round 20, however, is on this massive open area where you essentially have almost, let's say, little to no cover unless you use the pillars on the outside and stuff. And it's also a toxic round, which is generally one of the more difficult elements to play against alongside something like chill. So that needs to also be borne in mind. So when we look at this, then what I did is I essentially compiled how much time it would take you to do essentially 10 rounds. I believe it's kind of like the way that you can stay sane in this is to not do this activity too much. So I think 10 rounds at a time, meaning like you decide to sit down and you do 10 rounds of round 18 or 10 rounds of round 19, or you do 3 or whatever the fuck, is kind of like the way that you kind of keep your sanity the most. But the bottom line is this, right? It takes you about 36 minutes to do around 17 10 times. It takes you about 40 minutes to do round 18 10 times. It takes you about 35 minutes to do round 19 10 times, and it takes you about 49 minutes, and this is all on averages, by the way, and it's time spent in activity to do round 20. Bear in mind that as you've been seeing in the footage in the background, I only used one descendant for this, and it was Ines, and it was Ines specifically built for this activity. I have a video on my channel exactly for that. It is my mobbing build Ines. It's about 2 or 3 videos back. You can't miss it, and that is essentially the build that I used to do this. At the end of this video, I will quickly show just the mods that I used as well, just in case. So the bottom line is, you can see that in terms of like the fastest time that we can complete something, right, 10 of them is round 19. Okay, and we can do round 19 in 35 minutes average. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, it's a fire round. So this is really good for us with Ines, because Ines is a lightning descendant. So that means, or an electric descendant. So that means that we're not bothered too much by shields and stuff, and we can just brute force our way through any shields with our damage. So that's really good. Now, at the same time, also at the end here, you can see that I also calculated the amount of obviously cores that we got in a 10 round slice. So we can see that 17 gave us 45 on average, 18 gave us 68 on average, 19 gave us 66 on average, and 20 gave us 81 on average. So obviously 20 gives more, but it has a far larger time taken to complete a round, which means overall your weapon cores per let's call it minute is 1.7, right? Whereas when we look at round 19, it's 1.9. So even though the amount of cores that you get is less, it's 66 versus 81, boom and boom, you are spending less time overall in the activity. Plus, with the added benefit of the fact that 19 is obviously easier than 20, because A, you are inside the facility, so you can use cover. B, it's not fucking toxic. And C, the enemies are less tough than round 20 just by default, because they're a lower gear level, if you want to call it that way. Not a lot, but every little bit matters. So the large message that you can take away from this is, if you are capable of farming at this level, and that is absolutely something that you should build to, because the point is there will be additional levels added after this, so it's in your own benefit to actually do that. And then also you can build up a massive amount of other core types as well while you do these levels, which is important, because another feature that's coming in February is the ability to combine cores and skill them up. That is also something that they mentioned, unless I'm missing something. Please let me know in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure they shared that in the dev corner chat. So that being said, for me, with the Ines build that I use and the way that I play and the footage that you've been seeing in the background, round 19 is by far the most efficient way for me to get weapon cores, tier 7 weapon cores, and basically has been the way that I've been kitting myself out to get a huge amount of these tier 7 cores onto my weapons, and that's how I've been able to actually finish quite a few of my weapons already. As mentioned, I do quickly want to just flash the build for Ines that I use for this and that I used to compile all this information and did all the testing. This should be exactly like the one in the video, I think, with one possible difference, and that is the adding of Potent Collector. It is super important for you to have your secondary resource, dark energy or whatever the fuck it's called, available as much as possible, because a lot of your damage is going to come from Snare Hunter. Snare Hunter is a fantastic way for you to just kill massive amounts of enemies, and there are massive amounts of enemies in these activities, so you absolutely want to, you know, get on that. So you want to have access to as much of this resource as possible. Your skill 1 and 2 use MP, and your skill 3 and 4 use this secondary, this custom resource. So what Potent Collector does for you is it just gives you a much better way. You by default do accumulate this resource, but it is a lot slower than it is with Potent Collector. Potent Collector actually speeds this up a lot, and it means that you pretty much have Snare Hunter available, at all times, which is super useful, and you absolutely want to do that. If you want to see more in-depth discussion, actually how this build comes together, as well as things like which weapons to use, like Secret Garden and external components and reactor choices and all that stuff, please do go ahead and check out the video. That's far too much information to also shoehorn into this. But that's it for this video. I hope this helps you to farm your void, or rather your weapon cores, as fast as possible from this new activity, so that you can get your weapons kitted out and you can start building yourself up a nice fat arsenal of ultimate weapons with weapon cores in. Thank you very much. Let me know in the comments down below if any of this information was unclear and if I can add anything onto this video. Otherwise, as usual, fucking cheers.